There's something about failing in private that feels a little easier. When no one's watching, when no one's judging, it feels like you can pick yourself up, dust off your hands, and just keep going. But what happens when you fail in front of everyone, when the whole world, or at least the people around you, are there to witness your fall? That happened to me at 22. It was a year that, in many ways, changed everything for me. I was fresh out of college, full of ambition and big dreams, thinking that I was ready to conquer the world. I thought I had everything figured out. I had a plan. I was going to build this successful career, start a business, and somehow manage to be this perfectly balanced adult version of myself. But life doesn't care about your plan. It doesn't care about how hard you work or how much you think you've prepared. Sometimes it just doesn't go your way, and sometimes the failure hits so hard and so publicly that you can't hide from it. For me, that failure came in the form of a business I tried to launch. It was a small venture, just a passion project that I was convinced would take off. I thought I could turn it into something big, something meaningful. I spent months planning, researching, networking, and pouring my heart into it. I was determined to make it work, to prove to myself and everyone around me that I was capable. I remember the day it all fell apart. It wasn't dramatic at first, it was small things that started to slip. A product that didn't sell as expected, a partnership that didn't pan out. Then one by one, things I thought were solid foundations started to crack. My momentum slowed and suddenly I was overwhelmed. But I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to face the reality that my dream wasn't working. So I kept going. I pushed harder, trying to fix what I thought were just temporary bumps. But the truth was, it wasn't a small setback. It was a failure. And I had to face it. It wasn't just that the business failed, it was that everyone knew it failed. I'd talked about it so much. I'd shared my goals with friends, family, and colleagues. I'd posted about it on social media. I had given so many people a glimpse into this dream of mine, and suddenly I felt like I was standing there, naked, with nothing to show for it. The moment I realized it wasn't going to work, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. I didn't want to admit it to anyone. I didn't want to have to explain that all my plans, all my effort, had been for nothing. I felt embarrassed. I felt like I'd let people down. And worse, I felt like I had let myself down. But here's the thing I learned. Failing publicly didn't make me weak. It didn't make me less capable, less smart, or less worthy of success. It just made me human. It's a hard lesson to learn when you've spent most of your life chasing after success, but it's true. Failing doesn't define you. How you respond to failure does. The truth is, there's a lot of shame around failure. There's this unspoken expectation that if you fail, you have to hide it, brush it under the rug, and pretend like everything's okay. But here's what I've learned from failing in front of others. That's not the way forward. If you hide from your failures, you miss out on the opportunity to learn from them. And that's exactly what I did. At first, I did try to hide. I avoided talking about it with friends. I stopped posting on social media, and I pretended that everything was fine. But after a while, I realized that the more I tried to hide it, the more it affected me. I was carrying around this weight of shame, and it was suffocating me. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I opened up, I talked about the failure, I told my closest friends, my family, and even a few strangers what had happened. I admitted that I was disappointed, that I felt like I had let people down. And you know what happened? They didn't judge me. They didn't see me as a failure. They saw me as someone who was brave enough to admit that things hadn't gone as planned, and that was something to be proud of. It was in that moment of vulnerability that I started to heal. I realized that failure didn't make me weak. It made me stronger. It taught me that things don't always go the way you want them to, and that's okay. I learned that failure is not something to fear. It's an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to get better. And when you fail, the most important thing is to rise again. The other thing I learned from failing publicly was how much we overestimate the importance of other people's opinions. At the time of the failure, I thought everyone was looking at me with judgment in their eyes. I thought people were talking about my failure behind my back, laughing at my mistakes. But the truth was, most people didn't care as much as I thought they did. The people who mattered, the ones who loved me, supported me, and encouraged me to keep going. And the ones who didn't, well, they weren't worth my energy anyway. In the months following my failure, I took time to reflect and learn. I stopped beating myself up for not being perfect. I stopped trying to hide my flaws and instead embraced them. I used the lessons from that failure to guide my next steps. I looked at my mistakes, broke them down, and asked myself what I could do differently next time. And you know what? I did try again. Not with the same business, but with a new idea, a new approach, and a new mindset. This time, I wasn't chasing perfection. I wasn't trying to avoid failure. I was embracing the possibility of failure because I knew it was just part of the process. Failing publicly taught me that success is not a straight line. It's not a destination. It's a journey full of ups and downs, twists and turns. And sometimes those downs are exactly what you need to get to the next up. Now, I look back on that failure, and I'm grateful for it. It was one of the most humbling, eye-opening, and empowering experiences of my life. It showed me who I really am and who I want to be. It taught me to be kind to myself, to embrace my imperfections, and to be fearless in the face of failure. What I've learned from failing publicly is this: it's not about avoiding failure. It's about how you respond when things don't go according to plan. Failures don't define you, but how you get back up does. And as hard as it was, I wouldn't change a thing. Because in the end, I've become the person I needed to be. The person who doesn't fear failure, who understands that it's just another step in the process, and who knows that no matter how many times I fall, I'll always rise again.